Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Shemos, the first Sedra in the second book of the Torah. And we dedicate our learning to the safe and speedy release of the last remaining hostage in Gaza, thanking Hashem for the miracle of the return of the others, yet still the remaining hostage is a world, and we want that the return of Ran Gvili to the land of Israel, and to the safety and success of all of the soldiers in the IDF as they continue their heroic missions to protect and defend, with God's help, the land of Israel and the people of Israel. And also praying for the speedy recovery of all those injured, the injured soldiers and those wounded in the terrible atrocity terrorist attack in Sydney. And as we look at the book of Shemos, we note that the other books in the 5 books of the Torah, they have other names that are given to them by the rabbis. And the exception is Shemos, which is referred to by some rabbis as the Sefer Hasheni, the second book. And the reason given for this is that the opening word of Ve'ela, as Rashi explains later in the Sedra of Mishpatim, whenever we start a book or a paragraph with Ve'ela, that this conjunctive, this connecting Vav, connects the current portion that we're reading to the previous portion. And really, the book of Shemos is very much a continuation of the book of Bereshis, and the way that we start with the names of the sons of Yaakov that we have had listed a few chapters previously in the book of Bereshis, but the Torah recounts those names, and we learn from that they went in to that exile, to that period of very great suffering in Egypt, but they retained their names in that respect. They managed to keep part of an important part of their identity, although being in that idolatrous culture had an effect. And we know that they were the Jewish people were rescued just before they became beyond rescue, having descended to the 49th level of impurity. But still, they did manage to hold on, and this relisting of the names is one of the ways that we see that connection, that they managed to still bring with them their values from those early years in Bereshis, those foundational years in Bereshis. And the theme that I think that we can learn a lot from in the Sedra of Shemos is this idea of how ordinary people can become extraordinary. And as we look at the various people in the Sedra of Shemos, and I think that there are many that we can look at who did extraordinary things. And the core concept is that you don't think, in order to do extraordinary things, you have to be an extraordinary person. It is actually ordinary people who rise to the occasion, and they are remembered. And sometimes a person can use their talents and their capabilities, and they don't actually use them in the positive way. And the result, Hashem's plan happens irrespective. And they in a way lose the opportunity to be remembered for good. And the 4 particular people that I am going to focus on, but as I said, there are many others that are not in this list. And I think that if anybody had to choose 4, they could very easily choose 4 equally deserving people to focus on in this week's Sedra, who teach us how to make that leap from ordinary to extraordinary. For example, the midwives who disobey Paro's command to throw the infant boys into the Nile River, and they fear Hashem. And just to name, two of them. But the four that I actually want to focus on are Paro and Yisro, and the Paro, Yisro, Tzipporah, and the mothers of, well, it's actually really five. I'm sort of calling the last two as one, but the mothers of Yocheved and Amram. Now, the first one, Paro, is quite unusual because when we think about the leap from ordinary to extraordinary, then I think that our natural inclination would be that somebody who is like a positive role model, and Paro is not a positive role model. He is held up as an emblem of somebody whose ego really brought him down, and it shows us how he brings his entire empire to its knees because of his ego, and because of the way that his moral standards, his moral values are just crumbling as he is so wrapped up in himself and his power. And yet there is, interestingly enough, interpretation that we get from Ibn Ezra, that in order to teach Moshe Rabbeinu to be a leader, he had to be in the palace of Paro for 15 years, because anybody who was born into the slavery, into the Jewish people at the time, who had been subjugated and were at such a low point that they wouldn't have had the skills and the personality to actually become a leader. And Moshe Rabbeinu, in that palace, under the with the example of Paro as a leader, not to copy his evil tendencies and his egotistical tendencies, but just to see that strength and power that exuded from Paro. This was something that was a vital part of Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership training. And I think that it is extraordinary that we are able to take this positive result, and it is really, and I think this irony comes out from the fact that Paro thinks he's in control, and he finds out that the leader of the Jewish people who is going to rescue them is going to be born in water, and so therefore he passes an edict that all of the baby boys have to be thrown into the Nile. And he is actually sheltering the very leader that he's trying to destroy. So Hashem's control of events is all pervasive, but we are still able to acknowledge that Moshe Rabbeinu learnt certain aspects from being in the palace of Paro, and spending those years there. So this is extraordinary. This I think is some way, it's a somewhat a different interpretation that we can actually see a person. He is going to be the catalyst for extraordinary things, sometimes even against their will. Now, the following that I'm focusing on, that was Yisro, Tzipporah, and the mothers of Amram and Yocheved. They are people who choose to do the right thing, and that makes them extraordinary. And again, I think that we need to absorb that message, that You don't have to be extraordinary to start with. And if we look at Yisro, we can see that there are many similarities between Yisro and Avraham Avinu, Avraham our father. And they both Yisro, both Avraham Avinu and Yisro are products really of a completely idolatrous environment, and they are both searching, and they both have a letter added to that name. Avram becomes Avraham, and Yisro has that Vav added to his name after he goes to he joins the Bnei Israel at Har Sinai, and they they are both searching, and they find in the recognition of Hashem that there is a quality of life, there is a connection with the Creator that is not going to be found anywhere else. And similarly, they both they both arrange their children's marriage. Avram Avinu is instrumental in organizing that Eliezer goes to find a wife for Yitzchak, and Yisro tells his daughter Tzipporah that tells all of his daughters that the man that helped them at the well is somebody that should be welcomed into their house, and he is the matchmaker, as it were, between Moshe Rabbeinu and Tzipporah. And they both feed travelers. They have this exemplary standard of hachnosos orchim, of hospitality, and the moral fiber and courage is apparent in large amounts in both of them. And the fact that Avram Avinu stands up to Nimrod, the tyrant of the time, and Yisro stands up to the tyrant of the time, who is Paro. According to the Medrash, Paro called 3 advisors to help him deal with, in inverted commas, the Jewish problem. Those 3 advisors were Bilam Harosha and Eov and Yisro. And when Paro said that he wants to get rid of all the Jewish people, what's the best way to do it? Bilam was very keen on the final solution, on murdering the Jewish people, the entire nation. And Eov stayed silent, and Yisro was objected. He was not supporting Paro. He was disagreeing. He was standing up to Paro. And really, this is very great moral fiber. And again, these are people who do extraordinary things. And Yisro is, although he does not continue the path to reach the levels of Avram Avinu, but still he is remembered, and there is a portion of the Torah that is named after him, and the portion that is named after him contains the Aseres HaDibros and Ma'amad Har Sinai, the whole giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. So he has a tremendous merit in that, and this is extraordinary. He does extraordinary things, and this is something that we can help ourselves as we want to make that leap from ordinary to extraordinary. And Tzipporah, Moshe Rabbeinu's wife, to be the partner of the greatest man, our greatest leader. This is something that Tzipporah, that she is. The Medrash says that she ran like a bird. Rotza Katzipor, that's a play on her name. When her father points out that this Moshe Rabbeinu, who has helped them at the well, should be brought into the home. Yisro has 7 daughters, and Tzipporah is the one who is the eligible partner and becomes Moshe Rabbeinu's wife. And she is the only woman who circumcises. She circumcises her son when she realizes that because they haven't circumcised one of their sons, that this is actually potentially going to cause Moshe to be killed. And she realizes it and she acts upon it. And her beauty was something that endeared her to everybody who saw her. And this characteristic, this quality, and the role that she plays as the wife of Moshe Rabbeinu, and after Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu is on such a high spiritual level that they are not together as man and wife. But this is her role as his partner is something that gives her an extraordinary part in the whole story of the Jewish nation at this point. And finally, the mothers of Amram and Yocheved. Now, the we don't know what their names are, and their extraordinary acts were the naming of their children. And we see from the book of Bereshit that the mothers are the ones who give the names to the children. Now, the name Amram is a combination of two words. People, Ram, exalted. And the name Yocheved, again, is a combination of Kavod and Yud Hey, which is the name of Hashem. And this is like the covered of Hashem. Now, this was at a time when the Jewish people were in the thick of the exile and the enslavement in Egypt, when they were so downtrodden, and they would have been forgiven for thinking that the promises of redemption were impossible to come true. However, these two women gave their children names of hope, names of encouragement, names of belief in a future redemption that must have seemed so far away as to be practically non-existent. And their foresight, their vision, their belief in that redemption, their bitochen in the word of Hashem, and this is something that is absolutely extraordinary. And I think that as we look at these four, and knowing that there are many others in the Sedra who could easily be focused on in the same way, but just to use that in our own lives to help us realize that we have the capacity to be extraordinary, and God willing, we should find the way to realize our potential and achieve extraordinary things. Thank you very much for listening, and wishing everyone Shabbat Shalom.